Hello Finxters! At times as a coder you have to deal with the countless number of files within different directories. Hence it becomes reasonable to organize these files within specific directories. In this lecture we are going to look at various methods on how to list all the files of a directory. But that's the first bit. As a developer, you may need to filter the type of files present within a certain directory. That is, list the files in a directory having a specific extension before performing any operation on those files. So, we will also discuss different methods to find all the files in a directory with a specific extension. In this example, we will deal with .txt files which represent text files in Python. Now please note that though we will have a look at text files, but these methods will also work for any other file with a different extension, for example CSV files, PDF files, and so on. So without further delay, let the games begin and let us start finding files. Our first friend in this journey is going to be the OS module. The OS module is a module in Python that has various predefined functions which can be used to work upon directories. You can use the OS module for performing the following operations on directories: to create and remove a directory, listing the files of a directory, changing the current directory. Now, in this lecture, we are going to deal with point number 2, that is listing the files of a directory. Now, please remember that in order to use the functions of the OS module, you must import the OS module in your code before using it. So let's have a look at a few examples and learn how the OS module and its functions help us to list the files of a directory. So the first method of the OS module that will help us to list all the files and directories is known as list_dir. Now this right here is the syntax for the list_dir method. Now the list_dir method also takes a parameter which is path, wherein you have to specify the path of the directory within which you want to list all the files. However, if list_dir has no path parameter present within it, then it will list all the files present within the current working directory. So let's have a look at this in our code. Now, as I mentioned previously, that in order to use any method of the OS module, you first have to import the OS module. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, we have now imported the OS module. Now let's use a variable li, which is a list that will store all the files that are present within our current working directory. So li equals os.list_dir. So this also means that list_dir returns a list of objects. In this case, the objects are the files within the directory. Now let's go ahead and use a for loop and let's iterate over all the files that are stored within our list li, and let's print the files one by one. Okay, so that's it. Oops, for file in li, print file. Okay, now let's execute our code. As you can see that these are the files that are present within my current working directory. So at present, I am in this directory, that is Python OS, and these are the files that are present within Python OS. So as you can see that they have been listed here with the help of list_dir method of the OS module. Well, that's fine. Now what if you want to filter out all the text files from this directory? That is the files that have .txt extension. So there are 3 files in this directory with .txt extension, which is abc.txt, demo.txt, and work.txt. So let's go ahead and filter these out. Now there's a very simple way of doing that. You simply have to go ahead and check if file dot ends with. Now ends with is a method which returns true if a string, which is file in this case, that is the file name, ends with a specific value that has been fed into it as a parameter. Now in this case, we will simply feed in .txt as the parameter to our ends with method, which will check if the file name ends with txt. If yes, only then it will go ahead and print the file or the file name. Now, if you want, you can also go ahead and store these files in another list. Let's say I have a list goes by the name files, and now I'll simply go ahead and check if a particular file ends with .txt, then that means it is a text file. And now I will simply append that file within my list files. So files.append, and within it, I'll append file. Okay. Now let's go ahead and let's iterate over our list files. So for I in files, let's print I. So that's it. Now let's go ahead and execute this and let's find out if this works. And there we go. As you can see, we now have only those files which have the extension .txt. That is, we only have the text files. So this is how you can use the list_dir method to list all the files in a directory. And then you can use the ends with method to find a file with a specific extension. Okay, now the next method of the OS module that will help us to list files of a directory is known as the walk method. Once again, this is a method of the OS module. Hence, you have to import the OS module in order to use this method. Now, the walk method helps to perform 3 tasks. 1, it helps to extract the name of the root directory. 2nd, it provides a list of all the names of the subdirectories. And 3rd, it lists all the file names in the current directory. So we will make use of its 3rd function and we will list all the files in our current directory. So let's say for files in os.walk, or let's say all underscore files, and within os.walk, we need to pass the path. In this case, we are going to find all the files within our current working directory, which is Python OS. So to do that, we simply need to specify dot within quotes. Okay. Now, before doing anything else, let's go ahead and find out what happens if we print all underscore files. Let's execute this. And there we go. As you can see that first we have the name of the root directory, which in this case is the current working directory. Hence that is denoted with a dot. Then we have the name of the subfolders within the current directory. And as you can see here, we have a subfolder which goes by the name dir_a. So that has been listed here. And then we have all the files present within this directory, which are these files. Now our task is to extract all these files. So how do we select that? Now before I tell you how to select only the files, you might be wondering, what is this? This is nothing but once again the name of the subdirectory, which is dir_a. And in this case, the subdirectory is the root. So this is the name of the root directory, which is the subdirectory in this case. Then we have all the subdirectories. So the subdirectories present in this directory are none. So it's an empty list. Finally, we don't have any files stored within dir_a. So once again, we have an empty list. So it's clear that os.walk follows a tree structure. Initially, it will print the contents of the current directory or the directory for which we have specified the path. Then it will also list all the contents within the subdirectories within the current directory. Okay. Once we are done with that, now let's go ahead and extract only the files within this directory. So to do that, we need to specify 3 variables within our for loop. The first one will store the name of the root directory. Then it will store the name of the subdirectories. And finally, it will store all the files present within the current working directory. So this files will store a list consisting of all the files present within my current working directory. Now let's check that. Let's print files. And there we go. As you can see that now we have all the files present within my current working directory. Now what you can do is simply go ahead and iterate across all the files using a for loop. So for I in files, and then print the files or the name of the files one by one. Let's execute this. And there we go. As you can see that now we have all the files listed one by one, which are present within our current working directory. Now, if there was a file within dir_a, even in that case, that file would have been printed here. Well, we have now listed all the files. Our next task is to filter out only the text files, that is the files which have .txt extension. And once again for this, we will use our ends_with method, which will ask Python to list only those files which have the extension or which end with the extension .txt. Now, just for a change, let's say that we want to print or list only those files which end with the extension .py. Now let's see if this works. Oops, we have an error. And that error is majorly because I have used files.endsWith. It's not going to be files.endsWith. It should be i.endsWith, because I is the variable which stores the name of the files. Now this should work. And there we go. These are the only files which have the extension .py attached to them. Let's also check for the text files .txt. Let's check that. And there we go. We now have all those files which have the extension txt. So this is how you can use the os.walk method and filter out a specific file with a certain extension from the current working directory. Now you can also extract files from a different directory. To do that, you simply need to go ahead and instead of dot, you have to specify the absolute path of that directory. Okay, now the OS module has one more method that will help you to list all the files and directories present within a working directory, and the name of this method is scan_dir. Now please note that this is one of the latest methods that has been included in Python. So to be more specific, this was introduced in Python 3.5. So if you are using Python 3.5 and above, then you can definitely use this method, and it will list all the files and directories within a directory. So let's find out how this method works. Now, as I mentioned that this is a function of the OS module. So you have to first import the OS module, and then we use a list comprehension. Now, previously we saw that all the methods were returning lists, but scan_dir returns an iterator. So we iterate over the objects returned by os.scan_dir, and within os.scan_dir we pass the path of our current directory. In this case, we can simply specify that with the help of a dot within quotes. If this was a different file, then we would have specified it with the help of its absolute path. Now, once we iterate over the objects returned by os.scan_dir, we need to return the name of the files and directories that are being returned by os.scan_dir. And for that, we need to use an attribute .name. So .name will help us to extract the name of the file from the iterator object that is being returned by os.scan_dir. And once we extract the name, we go ahead and store that in a list. So this list, LST, has the names of all the files and folders contained within this folder, which is Python OS. Now we simply go ahead and iterate across the names or the files within our current working directory, and then print them one by one with the help of a for loop. So let's see if this works. And there we go. As you can see that we have all the files as well as the directories present within the current working directory. This brings us to the next part of our discussion, that is, how do we extract a file with a specific extension. So let's say I want to extract .txt. For this, we will once again use our all important ends_with method. So we will simply check if files.endsWith.txt, and only then we will print the file name. So that's it. Let's go ahead and find out if this works. And there we go. We now have only the files which have the extension .txt. So these are the three methods of the OS module which will help us to perform our task. Well, that was enough. Please take a break if you want and then come back, as we will now discuss a different module which will also help us to perform the same work that we did just now. That is, we will use a different module to list the files in our present working directory. So the name of the next module that will help us to list the files of a directory is Glob. It is a module in Python that has built-in methods that can help you to list files of a specified directory. To use the Glob module and its functions, you once again have to first import it into your program. As it is a built-in module in Python, you do not have to install it externally, but it is necessary to import it. So let's have a look at the Glob module and its methods that will help us to list the files in a directory. The name of the first method of the Glob module is Glob. Glob is a method from the Glob module which provides wildcards that make the process of retrieval of path very easy. Now, what are wildcards? By wildcards, I mean star, then the question mark operator, then you can even specify ranges and so on. Now, in this case, we will use the wildcard character star. So we will use the star character to list all those files which have the .txt extension. But our first task is to list all the files. So let's go ahead and find out how we can use the Glob module. So let's import Glob. Now let's list all the files in our current directory. So to do that, we will simply iterate over all the files in our current directory with the help of the Glob method of our Glob module, such that we will pass the star wildcard within our Glob method. Now, what does star denote? Star denotes that I want to find all the files and folders within my current directory. So that's it. Now we simply go ahead and print the file names one by one. So let's see if this works. And there we go. As you can see that Glob has listed all the files and folders present within this directory, which is our current working directory, and the files are as shown on the screen or on the output screen. Well, our next task is to find all the files which have the .txt extensions. In other words, we want to filter out only those files which have .txt extension, that is the text files within my current working directory. So how do I do that? All you have to do is go ahead and make a slight change. You simply have to specify that I want to find all the files that end with .txt. That's it. That's all you have to do. You simply have to specify within the Glob method that you want to find all the files which you specify with star, and then you tell Python that I want only the text files with the help of .txt extension. Now let's execute this code. And there we go. As you can see, we have the expected output. So this is how you can use the Glob method of the Glob module to filter out a file with a specific extension within the current directory. Well, we have another method from the Glob module which is known as iglob. This method will help you to list the files from a directory recursively. In order to use the iglob method, you first need to specify the path. So what is my path? My path is the current working directory, which is rather I would say that I do not need this, because if I do not provide dot, then by default Glob will search in the current working directory itself. Rather, I'll use **, which is used to tell iglob that I want to perform a recursive search, and then I have to specify my search pattern, which is done with the help of a /star.txt. So this will tell Glob that I want to search all those files within my current working directory which have the extension .txt, and iglob will search for the text files recursively. Now I stored that within a list by passing the path within my iglob method, and the recursive parameter has to be set to true. And then I simply iterate over my list lst, which stores all the files or the text files, and then I simply print it. Let's see if this works. And there we go. As you can see that I have all the text files present within my current working directory. Now, what if you do not want to list only specific files, rather you want to list all the files? In that case, you simply have to tell iGlob that I want to extract all the files. So you simply remove .txt and you just keep star. Now let's see what happens. And there we go. As you can see, all the files within my current directory have now been listed. Now what if I only want to extract the .py files? So all you have to do is to tell iGlob that I want to extract all those files which have the extension .py. Now let's execute this. And there we go. As you can see, we have only those files which have the extension .py. So that brings us to the end of this discussion. I hope this was helpful. If you have any doubt, please mention them in the comments below, and I'll be more than happy to answer all your queries. Thank you.